everyone, we're going to take a look at how we can make a crochet collar. So we're going to start with your yarn on your hook with a slip knot. If you're just wanting to make a collar, you don't have to leave these 3 spaces in between. This is just part of a pattern, this pattern right here, so that's why. You could just take a look, count how many stitches you have in the front, divide it in half evenly, and go from there. But not in this case. So anyways, join your yarn with this slip stitch, or however you like to join your yarn. I find this is the best because it won't come off. Okay, that's what we want. So now we're going to chain, let's say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. We're chaining 9. So for row 1, we're going to double slip stitch, back loop only. So to do that, I'll link, if you don't know how to do it, I linked a slower tutorial in the description, but here we are. So you're going to yarn over, insert your hook into the second chain from the hook, and then you're going to yarn over, pull up a loop. Pull your chain down, like actively pull it down, and you're going to slip the first loop on your hook through the last 2 stitches. Again, yarn over, insert your hook into that next chain, yarn over, pull up a loop, pull your chain down, keep it loose, slip the first stitch through the last 2 stitches, just like that. So that's 2, 3, 4, oops, 5, 6, 7, I chained really tightly, I guess, 7, 8, fantastic, because we started out with 9 chains, so that's good. Okay, now we're going to take a look at our single crochet stitches on the setup row. We have to slip stitch into the next 2 stitches. Don't slip stitch too tight. So when you slip stitch, you want to make sure this yarn is loose, your yarn you're holding, your active yarn, and the loop on your hook. So you can, like, when you're slip stitching, you can pull that down again and like actively pull against the slip stitches with your yarn and pull it through. That will make a super loose slip stitch. Okay, so now for row 2, we're going to skip the first 2 slip stitches we just made and do a slip stitch back loop only. So we're going to do really loosely. Again, keep that loose, like pull and slip through. Pull, slip through. Wow, it's noisy outside. Sorry about that. Okay, let's keep going. Okay, and in our last stitch, we are going to work 2 slip stitches because we're going to increase. So you're going to work through the front and back loop like a normal slip stitch, no back loop only. 1, and again, make it really, really loose. 2. All right, nice. We just increased. So now we're going to chain 1, pull that one tight, and turn. Okay, so now we're actually on the wrong side. We're on row 3. 1, 2, 3, yep. Okay, so now we're going to yarn over. We're going to do a double slip stitch back loop only, all the way down. So we have increased our stitch count by 1. So now I should have 9. So actually, let me do that. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Perfect. Okay, and again, we are going to slip stitch into the next 2 stitches. And you can see here, if you look very carefully, this is where we turned. So we know that, and you can kind of see where it goes in that stitch. So we are not working into the stitch. It has to be the next one. So we're going to insert our hook into the next 2 stitches and slip stitch. into those stitches. Okay, I like to turn left this way, I guess clockwise, turn clockwise. And now skip the first 2 slip stitch stitches and then slip stitch back loop only all the way down into the stitches, into the next 8 stitches. Okay, very good. And now we need to find the last stitch so we can see the front loop and the back loop. Slip stitch into that stitch and place 1 more slip stitch into that same stitch because we want to increase our collar. All right. Now we're going to chain 1, pull that tight, and turn clockwise. All right, so we need to work into that first, oh, I made mine really tight, but that first slip stitch here. So it was that increased slip stitch, right? And again, if you're having trouble, pull that yarn loose and double slip stitch. So now we're doing our double slip stitch back loop only row. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Good stuff. We should have 10. Now we're going to slip stitch into the next 2 stitches. Okay, good. And again, we're going to turn clockwise. And we're going to increase again. So we're going to skip those first 2 slip stitch stitches and slip stitch into the next 9 stitches, or slip stitch back loop only into the next 9 stitches. Okay, and now we're going to find the front loop, get in there, and the back loop of my double slip stitch. We're going to do a regular slip stitch, and it's still our increase row, so put in another regular slip stitch, and then you're going to chain 1. Ooh, that was really, really loose, and turn. Okay, so now we're going to do just a regular double slip stitch. So we should have 11 stitches. Sorry, regular double slip stitch back loop only with 11 stitches. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Great. Always count your stitches. I say that all the time. Work into the next 2 single crochet setup rows. So we have 1, 2. We're going to slip stitch into those. All right. And then turn clockwise as I keep taking my work off the camera. So I'm here, right? So we're going to turn clockwise, the way of a clock, just like that. Okay, skip the first 2 slip stitch stitches and then slip stitch back loop only into the next 10 stitches. And then again, we're going to do 2 regular slip stitches in our last stitch. Oh, there we go. Oops. Oh my gosh. chain 1 and turn. I'm always turning clockwise. And now we're going to be working down our slip stitch row with double slip stitch back loop only, and we will have 12 stitches. Okay, so let's turn clockwise. And let's start our double slip stitch back loop only rows. We need to have 12 stitches here. It's getting a little heavy. Okay, so we have 1, 1. It's kind of tricky to see your increases, so make sure you're counting. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, oops, 9, 10, 11, 12, 11, oops, 11, 12. Okay, we're good. Okay, let's take a look at what this looks like so far. Okay, this is what it looks like so far. So we are actually going to be done increasing, and we will just continue working all the way around. But we need to keep in mind that we did 8 rows of increases. So we should probably mark our stitch marker over here. Okay, and count in 8 stitches, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and put your stitch marker there. So I just did my last double slip stitch row, and so I'm going to slip stitch back loop only into these 2. So I just did my double slip stitch row, and now I did 2 slip stitches into the single crochet setup row. I will turn clockwise, and I will skip those 2 stitches, and I will slip stitch back loop only into the next 11 stitches. Oops. Because we have 12 total stitches, right? But we want to just do a normal slip stitch in the last stitch. So that was my 11 stitches. And now my 12th stitch, I do a regular slip stitch. Right, nice. And now we're going to chain 1. Go ahead and rotate clockwise. And now we're going to just repeat. We're going to double slip stitch, back loop only, into each slip stitch, back loop only row from the previous row. And we need to have 12 stitches. Oh my gosh. It's too loose, I keep losing it. So these are our non-increase rows. It's very simple. It's literally the same thing, except we're not increasing. Okay, now we do slip stitch into the next 2 stitches. We turn clockwise, and now we do our slip stitch back loop only rows. So go ahead and continue to do that all the way around until you reach the stitch marker over here, and then we're going to have to start decreasing. Okay everyone, I've come to the end where I need to start decreasing. So I'm going to go ahead and slip stitch over 1, 2. I'm going to remove my stitch marker. And excuse me, and now let's start. So we're gonna have to decrease these 2 last stitches together. And so let's slip stitch back loop only, 1, until the last 2 stitches. 3, 3, 4, Okay, let's leave these two. So now let's take a look. Decrease these two together. We're going to go into the back loop only of the next stitch, yarn over, pick up a loop, and then in the next stitch we're going to, don't do anything, we're going to insert our hook, yarn over, pull up a loop, then yarn over, pull through both loops. Okay, very good. So we just decreased. So let's go back down the line. Oh my. There we go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 11 stitches. Good, because we want that because we decreased once. Okay, so let's go ahead, slip stitch into the next two spaces, turn clockwise, and skip the first two stitches. And again, we're going to decrease in the last two stitches. So leave the last two stitches unworked for now. Oop, I didn't do that. Okay, so here we go. We're going to insert our hook into the back loop, pull up a loop, and then in the last stitch, we're going to insert our hook into the both loops, pull up a loop, and then pull the first loop on our hook through the last two loops. It's kind of like doing the double slip stitch, but we're putting two stitches together. Okay, let's go down with our double slip stitch, back loop only. So we have, it's kind of hard to see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Perfect. You successfully decreased. Okay, let's go ahead and slip stitch into the next two stitches. So we need to have 8 stitches at the end, remember? Because that's what we started with. Okay, so we're almost there. We're going to, skip our first 2 slip stitches and slip stitch back loop only all the way down, but leave the last 2 stitches unworked for now. Okay, so I'm at my last 2 stitches. So we're going to insert a hook, pull up a loop, insert into both loops, pull up a loop, take your first loop on your hook and slip it through the last 2. Okay, now let's work back down and see what we got. 1, 1, oh my, this is a little tight. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay, perfect. All right, and now let's slip stitch into the next 2. All right, skip those. Slip stitch back loop only. And leave the last 2 unworked for now. Or you can just think of it as slip stitching all the way down and then decreasing the last 2. So let's do that. Let's decrease in the back loop, insert your hook, pull up a loop, and go through both loops on this one. Okay, and we will be at 8. Let's do that last row. Okay, so 1. Oh Oh, I don't know why it's so hard to see that next stitch. Wow. I'm making those really tight. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, perfect. We are at our original stitch count, and now we actually have one more little row. So I'm going to just remove this one just for now so it's easier to see. So we started over here and we joined in this section, and now I'm going to slip stitch into one more spot, just once. If you have 2 empty single crochet setup rows left, that's fine. Just slip stitch into both of those, but I only have 1. And now for the last row, we are only working 1 row of slip stitch. So I did 1 slip stitch in the single crochet setup row, so I'll only skip 1. I don't think you'll have 2 for the pattern, but if you have 2, then the skip 2, and then let's slip stitch back loop only all the way down. But remember to work a slip stitch through both loops in your last stitch. Okay, and we're finished, so I like to fasten off like this. So you chain 1, pull it really tight, and leave some space or some string so you can seam that in later on the wrong side. So you just like seam it in over here. And now let's take a look. Let's take a look at our collar. Okay, nice. This is what it looks like. After a good block, it'll be all even and totally lovely. But yeah, here you go. Here is how you do kind of Peter Pan style collar.